It's a pleasure to have you along this afternoon. I would like you to indulge me for the next couple of hours. Indulgences really kind of define Marc Summers' career from a tasty standpoint, from the show that when you watched it as a kid, you couldn't believe there was something that cool on TV. He is the host of the famous, infamous Double Dare. He is all over Food Network, Unwrapped, producer of Restaurant Impossible, Dinner Impossible. He is a judge on Guy's Grocery Games, and we are thrilled to have Marc Summers join us for the next couple hours so we can dive deep into, a pool of slime or something with you. It is so good to have you in. Thank you for indulging us.
My pleasure. I left Santa Barbara this morning, drove up, and have had a beautiful time in your lovely city. You never have to bend my arm to come up here. It's amazing. And here we are. I can't believe you want me for 2 hours, but I'm excited.
We got an awful lot to talk about.
Apparently so.
I got questions. She's got questions.
Yes,
We've got questions. The audience might have questions.
Well, we hope so.
And I figured that we could actually bother you for at least 2 hours because you have a family relation going on here.
Yes.
Can we spill the beans?
Sure. Why not? Go ahead. Go for it.
Albie, in his attempt to finally book a megastar, says, I got one that I know I can deliver. I said, really? Who's it going to be?
I'm waiting to see who it is. Who is it?
You are Albie's uncle.
This is true. I have been for many years.
Fantastic.
Yes.
Blood uncle? Marriage uncle? How's that work?
Yes. Oh, well, Albie's brother... Or husband. Oh, hold on. Albie's. I'll get this right. Albie's father is the brother of my wife. There you go.
Okay. There you go.
Yeah.
So cousin by marriage, and he said that he used to be a production assistant.
Worked on
some
Restaurant
of your
Impossible, and I forgot. Did you work on Dinner? No, just Restaurant Impossible. Yeah.
That's
so
cool.
he's ruined your shows too.
No, not at all. He knows what he's doing. This is where he belongs, though, because he is a genius. He's the character from why can't I think of the Dustin Hoffman character that he played in? Oh my God! What is anyway? But I mean, he's a savant when it comes
Rain
to
Man.
sport. Yeah, Rain Man. I mean, he comes up with the most insane facts that's like nobody in the world should know, but he knows all this stuff.
It is very, very helpful. He makes us sound good each and every day. When I was a kid,
yes.
My influences from the broadcasting world were Bob Costas, Bob Barker, Howard Stern, and Marc Summers. I'm not even kidding.
That's an amazing list, quite honestly.
It is an amazing list. There is all kinds of different talent there. There is all kinds of different touch points of my culture. How old were you when you got the Double Dare gig?
34. I was 34, and focus groups, because I always looked much younger than I really was,
definitely.
Focus groups thought I was like 22, 23, and I was like a big brother or an uncle. And so I wasn't allowed back then to talk about being married, having kids, because they wanted to keep the mystery alive. And I was on the Today Show with Bryant Gumbel. And they told him, Bryant, do not talk about him being married. Do not talk about him having kids. And, of course, the first thing Bryant says is, Marc Summers is here. He's host of Double Dare. And, of course, we know you're married and have a couple of kids. First thing out of his mouth.
Jeez.
Yeah. And so he sort of spilled the beans. And then the word was out. And, it didn't seem to affect anything. But, let's go back and talk about the people that you admired. Bob Costas started doing, I think, play-by-play when he was about 19 years old back in the Midwest.
Syracuse Sky Chiefs is where I think it began, and then he went to St. Louis for a one-and-done run with the St. Louis NBA team that came and went.
Yes, that didn't work out too much. But do you know what his dad is known for?
A gambling problem.
No. The number one sports agency, which has been acquired now by William Morris, is IMG, International Management Group, and Bob's father started it.
Really?
Yeah, he was one of the founding fathers of IMG, and that's where he got sort of the sports stuff back. And his mother, Lila, and I worked on a show called Celebrity Sweepstakes. I was a writer on Celebrity Sweepstakes, a game show that was on NBC, and Lila was our contestant coordinator. And I used to have an office there, and Arnold Schwarzenegger used to come in, smoke cigars, and talk to his then wife, who is no longer his wife. And, so it's weird how when you start talking about this. And then you go to Stern, who I think perhaps one of the top interviewers in all of broadcasting. Ever. I mean, you listen to the stuff he does. I'm a huge James Taylor fan, and I thought I knew everything about JT, and the stuff he got out of him the last time he was on the show was absolutely remarkable. And I did the show twice. And nothing is more frightening than sitting in that green room wondering what the hell Howard Stern is going to ask you.
Right.
And my wife said, you better not talk about our sex life. And, the only thing he asked me to do was go in the other room and measure myself. That was as bad as it got. But that was an amazing experience.
Physical challenge?
Yeah, let me tell you. And he had just gotten the divorce from Allison. And it's one of my favorite tapes that I have. I actually turned the interview around and interviewed him. And because I knew everything about him and I had done a lot of research on him. And so that was a really interesting day. And Barker was my influence because I used to come home from nursery school when I was going in Indianapolis, Indiana, and he was doing Truth or Consequences on NBC. And my first job out of college working in Los Angeles was as an idea man on Truth or Consequences. And I have a documentary coming out called On Your Mark, which premieres in October. And the opening of this documentary is Bob Barker introducing me on the stage of the Magic Castle when I was 21 years old. It's just freaky to go back and look at that.
Very cool. By the way, I've got magician questions for you.
Oh,
I really do. I am as prepared for this interview as I have ever been in my entire life for anything. I really mean it.
That's cool.
No way I put this much effort into a single collegiate class that I did preparing for you to come in today.
Cool.
And, I learned that you were a page at CBS for a while.
I was.
And when you talk about how you transitioned into a young man looking for a career to finding a career as a game show host, you literally learned from the best ever in the business. Bob Barker was an influence on you.
Yep.
Wink Martindale was an influence on you.
He was my neighbor for a while, yeah.
That is so cool.
Yeah. Yeah, and Bob, I was working. My first introduction was I was a page on Price is Right, and there I was, in Contestants Row, looking up at Bob, thinking, "Oh my God, I've died and gone to heaven." Then I get a job doing Truth or Consequences, and throughout I've got many Bob Barker stories, but the bottom line is he was probably the best ever. When it came to doing that stuff. And he was the model that I hope to attain at some point,
He created a sense of rooting for the contestant and drama that no host of The Price is Right since has been able to create. I used to love The Price is Right.
Yes. You don't watch it anymore.
Drew Carey is the worst host of. These are not Mark's words. These are mine. Drew Carey could not give a damn if a single person wins or loses a single thing. You can actually see him trying to get basically his model's phone numbers to go party with him afterwards. He does not care at all.
I'm not sure that it makes a difference because the ratings maintain. The question is, are these shows host-driven or not? People seem to still be watching. Is he as good a host as Bob? No. I think whoever walked into that position, it's sort of like Jimmy Fallon walking in, or Jay to where Johnny was. So it's difficult, needless to say. The one thing that Barker and I always used to talk about was making the contestants the stars. And Bob and I always discussed the fact that the model was Jack Benny. When we grew up, Jack Benny was a comedian who had an ensemble of people, and everybody else got the jokes, and he was sort of the straight man. And that's how Bob looked at it. He said, if I get one or two jokes in a week, that's fine, because it's not about me, it's about the contestants. And I remembered that, and I think that's one of the reasons Double Dare was successful. I never talked down to the kids. I never used a squeaky voice. I never said, do you have a girlfriend? I treated them like adults and with respect, and by the way, wanted them to win every game. And I think Bob certainly was a big influence on that.
That's so cool. We've got Marc Summers hanging out with us in studio. I look at that Jack Benny comment. The Benny brilliance was he used to tell people it doesn't matter who gets the punchline off, because the very next day at work they're going to say,
"Did you see the Jack Benny show?
It was so funny last night."
Yep. Exactly right. I
TV
got to
history
meet him.
is washing over me. This is beautiful.
Well, I got to meet him towards the end. I was a page, and there was an AFI dinner for Jimmy Cagney. And Sammy Kahn wrote a song for Frank Sinatra. That's a whole other story I can tell you about. And Mr. Benny was working at a private club that night and couldn't see it. So my job was to meet him at the door at CBS Television City the next day and sit with him as he watched the recording of the James Cagney AFI tribute. And he walked in, and the first thing he said to me was, "Do they still have that lousy cafeteria here?" That's what he said to me. And it was just so
very Jack Benny.
Yes, the fact that I got the last end of real show business. I got to meet Frank Sinatra. I got to meet Jack Benny. It was just the cool. And then that night at the AFI dinner, I was a page then, and Groucho Marx was there. I stood next to Don Rickles as he fawned over James Cagney. It was John Wayne was there. I mean, it just was nuts. The people that I came in contact with. I worked on the Sonny and Cher show. I worked on the Carol Burnett show. And I'm not so sure that anything has really come up to that level from those days.
I agree with you. You look at TV and its landscape right now, and you go back and you look at not only, well, first of all, we'll never consume anything like that again because we now live in a 600-channel universe. Yeah. But
and these stupid things here, these stupid
phones.
Right.
But, everyone's like, Amy Schumer is the greatest female comedian in the history of television. And I always said the Carol Burnett show, just for a moment, you had Harvey Keitel and Corman. I mean, it was just genius. Yeah. It was absolute genius, and you were right there in the middle of it.
I was there. I was so lucky to be a part. I was on the set the last day of the Sonny and Cher show when they had announced the divorce, and Sonny didn't want to get it done, and he was in the background playing football, and they wanted to get him on the set, and Cher was in her dressing room, and it was just like the tension of let's just go through it, get it done, and go home was so uncomfortable and yet sort of magical to be a part of that whole situation.
That is cool. It's a moment in time.
Oh my God, just insanity.
So you get the Double Dare gig. I actually thought you were in your 20s too. I'm surprised to find out
I'll be 66 in November.
You wear it well, man.
Thank you.
Really, really do. It's that full head of beautiful hair that you still have.
And I just got a cut yesterday.
Very looking good. Thanks for getting it cut for the radio show. It goes over huge. So tell us about the audition process, because Nickelodeon is an up-and-coming network at that time. Yep. And did you have any creative control over the show? Was it your baby? Did you come up with it? Is it playoff Truth or Consequences?
Trust me, if I came up with it, I wouldn't be sitting here with you right now.
So how did you get the job?
It was everything that's happened in my career that has worked out has all been a mistake. I was doing warm-ups on television shows. I was working on Star Search and Webster and What's Happening Now and Our Magazine and making a pretty darn good living. I started the Comedy Store in 1976. I started with Dave Letterman, Robin Williams, Gary Shandling, all those guys. We all started together. It's pretty lonely at the bottom there because, how many times can you ask people where they're from? And Dave had started to break through, Robin broke through, Jay started to break through, and I wasn't that good as a stand-up comic. I knew I could be myself, but I wasn't particularly good at doing stand-up. And a friend of mine, Dave Garrison.
Did you work blue?
No, I didn't. That was the other thing. I was sort of the David Brenner. I was very clean.
Okay.
And back then is when everybody started saying the F word, and
right.
And I wasn't into it. I just wasn't into it. And so a friend of mine from Indianapolis, Dave Garrison, was a ventriloquist, and Dave came out to L.A. to seek his fame and fortune about the same time I did. And he got just sort of fed up with the whole thing. And he called me up one day and said, I just got a phone call from some network I'd never heard of called Nickelodeon. There's some game show. I'm not going to go on camera anymore. I'm giving up the ventriloquism. I'm going to be a producer. Why don't you go to this audition instead of me? I went, okay, great. So I don't even know if you could even do that today. So I went to this audition. I said, Dave Garrison was supposed to be here at 1:15. He couldn't make it. I'm going to fill in. They said, fine. They had auditioned, I find out after the fact, 1,000 people in New York, and didn't like anybody, so they came to Los Angeles, and I was the first guy to audition in L.A. And I got out of the audition, and I said to my agent, I got this. And he said, that's what you think. I have like 9 other clients going. Good luck. And I did one audition, got a second call back, a third call back. And the one thing I used to do when I auditioned was I would get the name of the exec producer and the casting director, got their names, knew the show was going to start shooting in September. End of August, I called Mike Klinghoffer, the exec producer, and I said, what's going on? Are you guys casting this thing? And he said, we're just talking about you. We got it narrowed down to you and another guy.
Do you know what the second place finisher was?
Nobody has ever told me, okay? And they said, but we
Drew
don't
Carey.
know. Yeah. They said, we don't know if you guys are any good with kids, because when we did the auditions, they had grown-ups playing the part of kids. And I said, well, I have kids. I did magic shows for kids. They said, not good enough. So I came up with a concept. I said, why don't you fly us both to New York, put us in a studio with kids, let the best man win. They flew us both there. To this day, don't know who the other guy was. We did the audition on a Tuesday. Wednesday, I get the phone call, you got the job. And I said, after 1,000 auditions in New York and 1,000 in L.A., why did I get the job? And they said, quite honestly, you guys were about even. But at the end of his audition, he looked at the camera and said, is that it? Do you guys want me to do something else? And I looked at the camera and said, we'll be back with more Double Dare right after this. And because I threw it to commercial, they thought that was more professional.
Wow.
And that's how I ended up with the gig. And by the way, after growing up watching Barker and Jack Barry and, Gene Rayburn and all those guys, you always throw to commercial when you're done.
Yeah.
That's what you do. And so who would have thought that watching TV would have been the smartest thing I ever did? That's what landed me a job that changed my life.
Gianna, note to ourselves, throw to commercial.
Throw to commercial.
Probably have to do that about now, don't
I'm
you?
actually making
better.
notes. I'm not kidding.
Yeah, we've got what we call the big segment at the beginning of every hour. We're going to go to 25 if you want a time spot right here. And then we're just going to keep going because Marc Summers is here this afternoon and is going to be hanging out with us today to talk about. We're going to get into the world of sports and the fan that you are and how you became all that way. But we got way too much. We're just at the dawn of Double Dare. You said that you've got this.
Yeah.
You knew you had it from your very first. What was the inclination? Why did you feel that way?
You know what? Here's the thing. Nobody in the room knew anything about game shows. I had been a writer on many game shows at that point in my life and had started to announce some game shows. And I kind of knew my way around the territory a little bit. So I went in with tremendous confidence. And I was also, at that point in my life, I was tired of doing warm-ups. I had opened up, believe it or not, a smoked salmon business that was doing better than I was doing professionally in show business. And I thought, well, hell, this is my last-ditch effort. If this doesn't work, I'm done. I'm going to be working green rooms and catering for the rest of my life. And for some reason, I went in with more confidence than I had ever done it before. We shot 65 of these things, and it exploded. Back in the day, VHS or UHF TV was huge, and they were running Facts of Life in different strokes, getting huge numbers. All of a sudden, the numbers start to go away.
You take the good, you take the bad, you take them both, and there you have.
There you go. Facts of Life.
Thank you.
And all of a sudden, the ratings drop. They can't figure out where they're going. Well, there's something research they found out wise. The kids would go to the playground and say, I saw these guys jump into 4,000 pounds of baked beans, get a flag, and then they went to space camp. And not everybody had cable back then, so they'd go to the home of the kid who had the cable thing. And then all of a sudden, it started to snowball. And they contribute, actually, the rise of cable to three people. Larry King on CNN.
Sure.
Gallagher on Showtime. And me on Nickelodeon, because it forced people to go out and, order cable and start watching television. So we shot a total of 525 episodes, the longest running series in the history of Nickelodeon. And, we did every version. We did Family Double Dare. We did Super Sloppy Double Dare. We did celebrity versions. Started in Philly, went to New York, back to Philly, finally down in Orlando. And I got to tell you, I can't believe they gave me a check at the end of the week. It was the most fun. Harvey, our announcer, Robin, my sidekick. And then, yes, I eventually became producer. I edited the show. And it was a multiple, sort of person who got to arrange, select questions, test physical challenges, work on new obstacles. And it's kind of where I got the background as a producer that led me to kind of what I'm doing today as well.
Are you just swimming in Con Air telephones?
Yes, you remember that, huh?
Oh, of
Con
course.
Air telephones. That's hysterical.
I remember when my sister finally got one from like the CVS. I said, that's the same phone they give away on Double Dare.
Con Air. I haven't heard that word in years, man.
The Con Air phone. Absolutely. It was good. It was a pink pastel phone, and this is when phones still had cords.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
There was no video playing. Yeah. Oh,
true.
It was so cool that you had the Con Air telephone. When did you realize that it was a hit? You said eventually it became a thing that kids were talking about on play. This thing went from popular to bona fide hit to touch point in the zeitgeist of a childhood's culture.
Insanity.
Yes.
And it's interesting because so many people your age who grew up who are, celebrities who come and see me and like go crazy. I've got a bunch of those stories, but we got called to do a personal appearance in Virginia on a weekend. And, I didn't think anybody was going to show up. Well, 5,000 people showed up at this mall, okay? Then we had one the next week, and 7,500 people showed up at the mall. Then we did another one, and there was 10,000 people at the mall. And somebody said, well, we should put this in an arena. So next thing I know, for 8 years, we toured, did 40 personal appearances a year for 8 years, and we were selling out the Palace of Auburn Hills, and theaters around the country. 20,000-seat arenas. So I was like a rock star for kids. It was insanity. And we'd do a full 2-hour show. So, and then I did another show called What Would You Do, which was, another crazy program that came out of Nickelodeon. And it was right time, right place. They found out that kids were living vicariously through their parents, watching game shows, didn't have their own show. We gave prizes, we gave money, we gave computers, we sent them on vacations. And it was, also a lot of it is timing. Come on, I'm not going to take full credit for this deal. Nickelodeon put it on at 5:30. Moms would say, let me finish dinner, go watch your show. It was just the right place, the right time. I'll tell you another story that I heard, and to this day, it's one of the few guys I've never met and always wanted to, and he lives up here. The story I was told was that Dana Carvey was offered the show, got the same offer for Saturday Night Live that same week, took that instead of Double Dare. And if that's true, I've always wanted to say thank you because, it could have changed my life, and it obviously could have changed his.
How often, because I know that you were in radio and you were a stand-up comedian and you dabbled in magicianry. Is that the right word for it?
Magic.
Dabbled in magic.
Yes.
Okay. How often did a program director tell you, like, I can hear the smile in your voice? How much do you think your very sunny voice helped you as a host in your career?
That's interesting. Well, you're a broadcaster, so you get this. I think a lot. I'll be at a department store and somebody will turn around and go, I knew that was your voice. I don't think I have a distinctive voice, but apparently I do.
Yes, you do.
And the last time I did, I'm not name dropping, but I've known Seacrest since he's 19 years old. The last time I did Seacrest radio show, he said, you pissed me off. And I said, why? He said, you sound exactly the same now as you did when you were doing Double Dare. And he said, most guys your age, they start to get a little creaky and this and that. But for whatever reason, I've been, able to keep this, young, youthful voice going.
Non-smoker.
Well, I've never smoked.
There you go.
In my life. I've never even tried a cigarette.
Me neither.
No, you either, huh?
Me neither. No. No, we're in San Francisco. We don't smoke cigarettes.
Well, I've never done the
things, maybe.
But this is so much fun. I'm glad that you're here. So it becomes a cultural touch point. And now if you look at who we are as a society, it is the looking back that provides, South Park just did a whole thing about member berries. It is what we remember about our childhood is pretty much now where we retreat to mentally for all our warm and fuzzies because everything else is available on the internet. So what was special to you when you were a kid? It was Double Dare.
It was Double Dare, and I'm backstage at a Bruno Mars concert in Philadelphia, and the agent said, would you like to meet Bruno? I said, God, I'd love to meet him. I said, he's not going to have any idea who I am, but I'd love to meet him. And he sees me on the other side of the stage, and he runs, throws his arms around me, hugs me, and I said, do you know who I am? And he said, you raised me. And, oh, my God, And that's happened to me many times with many celebrities who, sort of are, in awe, which always makes me laugh because I just wanted to be a working broadcaster. That's all I ever wanted to do. The fact that any of this stuff actually worked was pretty darn cool. And so I'm just, I hate it when people come up to me and say, I know you don't want to talk about this, and I know you're probably tired of it. It's like, no, I'm happy you remember who the hell I am. So, I'm always happy to sit and talk and sign autographs and take pictures and whatever you want to do because I've been lucky. I've been very lucky.
Well, I'm glad you feel that way because at 7:00 when we're done, we said that you'd meet everyone who wanted to meet you out on the corner and you'd be signing flat objects only.
Why not?
Marc Summers is here with us in studio for the rest of the afternoon. We haven't even gotten to Food Network. As a matter of fact, we haven't even gotten to the physical challenges yet. Who came up with the booger in the nose thing? That is next here on 95.7 The Game.
On your mark, get set, go! Welcome to Super Sloppy Double Dare. We have things left up here. Props is what they are called. Would you mind if I gave you a Double Dare t-shirt? Would you like that?
No.
Well, I have egg on my shoe and a song in my heart, and we're going to carry on with this next physical challenge, and it goes something like this. You ever play sock baseball?
You ever been in a cockpit before? You ever seen a grown man naked?
Parents will love this at home. What was Popeye's father's name?
Dare.
Ah, no, that's wrong. What are you doing? Probably don't even know, and they call you the brains. Hey, you're a man. Wipe it on your shirt, pal,
Man. You can't keep kids on the edge of their seat like that.
You must stand right here and pray. Welcome to clearly one of the best wrestling matches of all time, Super Slopomania. This is the dumbest thing I've ever done. And as we always like to say, Harvey must have a lot of money put away. Good God. Man calls himself a wrestler. All right, well, thank you so much. We've lost control. We're cutting. Great. Thank goodness.
That is the radio equivalent of us rolling out the red carpet for you.
Well, I got to tell you, Super Slop-O-Mania 1 that we did with Bobby the Brain Heenan and Gorilla Monsoon was one of the most thrilling days of my life because nobody was funnier. I mean, he's still alive. He's unfortunately very sick, but Bobby Heenan was a genius. And he came on, and he knew how to play this game. And Gorilla Monsoon, his name was Gino Morello, had like 3 degrees from college. But these guys were comedians and knew how to play the crowd, and they were geniuses. And they said to me, do you mind if we do something to you at the end? I said, do whatever you want. And they picked me up and dropped me in a big vat of chocolate. And, you know, it was great television, and they were the sweetest guys. And I had great friendships with these guys. And then we did Super Slop-O-Mania 2. I mean, one day we had, we were doing a celebrity version on Fox. We had Weird Al Yankovic against Lou Ferrigno. I mean, you know, the whole thing was just ridiculous.
Very cool.
Yeah.
I mean, whenever you can get Ferrigno v. Yankovic, you go for it. I mean, that is ratings gold.
We kicked off the Fox network at 8 o'clock. Nobody even remembers that it was Double Dare that kicked off the Fox network on weekends.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. And then the Simpson guy came along. Or
Yeah.
This Tracy Ullman is where
Tracy
they gave birth
Ullman,
to
too.
that. Yeah.
Yep.
Marc Summers is joining us. That very familiar voice you hear is actually with us in studio today. Welcome back to the show. It's great to have you here. Someone says, and by the way, your reviews are through the roof on the always almost miserable text line that we have going here.
It's a little salty at times.
The text line is loving this right now and says, Damon, I hope you're taking a couple of listener questions. Why wasn't the go-kart the top prize every damn time? It was the best possible prize for a kid.
That's what my son always wanted. He wanted one of those go-karts. Yeah, that was cool. It was a 2-seater go-kart, as I remember.
Very cool.
Yeah, and, you know, we have space camp trips to Disney before Disney Channel happened and computers, but I will admit that the go-kart was probably the coolest thing we ever gave away.
Did you remember that movie Space Camp, which I think helped people watch Double Dare because, like, if you could get a trip to Space Camp after you had just seen the movie, I mean, that's like a kidgasm that you just can't even contain the excitement.
Kidgasm, there's a new word for
probably
you.
Shouldn't use that word again, to be totally honest with you.
There you go.
Who were the contestants? Where did you find the kids?
This was the best part about the show. People say to me, why do you think the show is successful? And I said, one of the reasons was because we used real kids from the Philadelphia school system, New Jersey, we'd go to Delaware, and where Disney had perfect blonde hair, blue-eyed, you know, beautifully coiffed kids. We had kids with pimples, and their hair was a little messed up, and they were real.
They're
and
normal.
You know, they were normal kids, and I think the kids at home could relate to them. The hard part for me was the Philadelphia accent is unusual, to say the least. And if you're going away for the summer, they would say, I'd say, what are you doing for the summer? They'd say, going down shore. Well, I didn't know what down shore meant. Down the shore, which means they go to the beaches in New Jersey. But it took me about 5 times before I understood what down shore meant. And, you know, then we went to New York. And then when we went to Orlando and we had all of America standing in line at 7 o'clock in the morning to get it. And, you know, you could back then come in, get an audition, and be on the 11 o'clock show. And, you know, they just one of the biggest mistakes Nickelodeon ever made was closing those studios down there because kids were flocking to go to Universal Studios to come to these live shows. We did What Would You Do? And we did Double Dare. And they did, you know, Guts and, you know, a million other programs. And they were sold out. You know, we changed the audience 5, 6, 7 times a day. There were so many people.
How many episodes would you film in a day?
You ready for this? 6.
Wow.
Yeah, we do 30 shows a week. You know, it was crazy. We would do 3 upfront games and then 3 obstacle courses, break for lunch, 3 upfronts, and 3 obstacle courses.
Wow.
That's a long day.
It was exhausting.
A lot of mopping for all those consecutive obstacle courses.
And
as
in
well.
Philadelphia, it was difficult because the studio was about the size of this studio. But when they built the Nick Studios down in Orlando, they built drains into the floors.
Smart.
So these guys would come on with these massive squeegees and just put it into these drains, and, you know, it worked out much better then.
What was slime?
Well, here's the thing. So you were telling me about your daughter.
My son.
Your son.
Yeah, my
who
son is obsessed with slime.
Okay.
We watch YouTube videos. We make it all the time.
But
with
they
glue.
don't they tell you to use glue and all that stuff. Okay, here's what we used on Double Dare: vanilla pudding, applesauce, and green food coloring. That was it.
So it was edible.
Well, everything had, see, insurance-wise, if the food got in the kids' mouths, it had to be edible. So that was part of the deal. And if you have saline solution and Elmer's glue and it gets in your mouth, that's not real slime. And the consistency that we had is totally different than that stuff I see online. So that was the real recipe.
I'm going to make it.
Yeah, there you go.
Fun.
Did you ever have parents, moms throwing themselves at you, doing whatever it took to get their kid on to Double Dare. I mean, the highly mobile can grease the host a little, maybe get my kid on. How often did people try to bribe you
All the time.
on behalf of their kid?
All the time. Okay. As soon as people found out where I lived, there were people knocking on my door 24/7. We literally had to move at one point into a gated community.
Gated community.
Yes.
Nice.
Because it was 24/7. The weird part for me, okay, this is about, when I used to work at the Comedy Store, all the girls that hung backstage and wanted to hang out, we used to refer to them as jokies, okay? And there were women, we would do meet and greets, and every year we were sponsored. One year Sunkist, one year Reebok, every year was a different sponsor. And we'd do the meet and greets with the kids. And the moms who would throw themselves at me was freaky, okay? I mean, I have one story I'll tell you off the air, but
It's an off the air.
No, we
Okay.
insist. Just go for it.
Share.
Well, this woman, she said, "Will you take a picture with me?" And I said, "Sure, absolutely." And as they're taking the picture, she takes her hand and slips it down the back of my pants and grabs my ass. And it's like, whoa, what was that? And as she's leaving, she hands me a little note and she says, "Here's my phone number. My husband's a cop. He works the midnight shift. Give me a call." And it's like, yeah, your husband's a cop. He's got a gun. I'm going to give you a call at midnight. That makes a great idea. And by the way, I'm married and have 2 kids. Okay,
Right.
so
Wow.
It's like, thanks very much for the offer, but
Yes.
the fact that he comes with bulletproof vests and weaponry
I'm
means
out.
It was kind of a regular thing that moms thought, because I was the closest thing to show business when you go to St. Louis or Kansas City. So that was always an odd part of show business to me,
and that's when Mark got his first professional goosing from a mom who wanted their kid on Double Dare.
She was cute, though, I must say that.
Next hour, we're going to get into Food Network. We're going to get into TED Talks. We're going to get into everything in its place. A lot of the questions are, will you ask Mark about talking about OCD? I have OCD, and him talking about it made me realize that I had it.
Nice.
And there's some stuff going on here. We're going to get into all of that. We'll talk about your documentary On the Mark, which is coming out in
October.
Fantastic. One of the first rules of show business is never work with animals or kids. And you obviously worked with kids 6 times a day.
Yep.
How often did you run into the kid who was either awestruck by the moment, got nervous without mom or dad, was overwhelmed by the TV setting, and you had to call a timeout and shut the whole thing down?
Almost never. Which was fascinating because I would make a point of going into the makeup room and introducing myself and getting to know them so they didn't walk out. Now, as the show grew exponentially and we became bigger and bigger, I didn't want them to be intimidated, so I wanted to cozy up to them in a proper way as the host so they didn't get nervous. I'll tell you where it got nuts. When we did Family Double Dare on Fox and we were giving away cars.
Right.
And the parents... the kids did it for fun. If the kids didn't win and didn't get the obstacle course, they just wanted to get messy, okay? But the parents were intense. And a couple of times, one time, the kid missed obstacle number 8 in the flag and, 2 seconds left. And the father grabbed the kid by the neck and threw him against the wall and said, "You little so-and-so, I needed that car." And all this. And we had to pull him off, So those things happen from time to time. And, it's a game. We're here to have fun. Don't take it so darn seriously.
It's like a Little League game. Leave it to the parents to ruin it.
Yes, yeah. I coached for 8 years. Believe me, I know all about that. One of the other things that was happening is one day each obstacle had to be tested by our insurance company to make sure that it was safe. And so we had this thing called the sewer chute. I don't know if you remember that one, but a kid had to climb up a ladder and come down this small sort of plexiglass box. The kid flipped over. I could have sworn that the kid was dead. He looked like he snapped his neck. Oh. Okay, and you hear me saying in the rest of the course, "Are you okay? Are you okay?" I'm wanting to stop tape, and then And so we gets to obstacle number 5. And, "Sorry, are you okay? See you tomorrow on Double Dare." His father was an attorney, and he came up to us afterwards and goes, "That wasn't very safe." And the big screen TV was obstacle number 6. Here's the deal. I won't sue you guys if you give us the large screen TV. And we went, "Whatever you want, sir."
Done.
You can have
Wow.
it.
Keep us out of court.
That's right. We didn't want to do it. Now, when doing the tour was crazy because we would do 2 shows a day. I get offered in Philadelphia to do 3 shows. We did like a 10, a 1, and a 4. It was exhausting. And we would bring parents up on stage and have the kids pie them. And if they didn't pie them the way I thought they should be pied, I would say, no, that's not how you do it. This is how you do it. And I would really deck the parents because it would be good and the audience would laugh. And we hear 20,000 people laugh. It's a cool thing. So I get a phone call like a Wednesday after we do the Philadelphia third show. Hi, this is counsel for Viacom. I said, yes, how are you? And they said, fine. Were you in Philadelphia over the weekend? I said, yeah, as a matter of fact, I was. Did you do a show at 4 o'clock? Yeah. Do you remember bringing on a mom and a kid? Yeah, as a matter of fact. Did you throw a pie in this mom's face? I said, well, as a matter of fact, I did. I said, why? And they said, they're suing us for $2 million. She said she can't have sex with her husband anymore. I said, what? She said, yeah, and it was a nuisance suit. And they gave her $25,000 to go away. But that was her thing, that I somehow distracted her brain that she could never have sex with her husband anymore because of the way I hit her in the face with a pie. So,
traumatic pieing.
Traumatic pieing, what can I tell you? So, those things really happen, and you kind of scratch your head. But, when a company becomes large like that, people figure, I'm just going to sue them and see what I can get out of it. She got $25,000 to go away.
Wow.
How you came up with the physical challenges, how you basically kept it sloppy is something that I want to know about. And we're going to get back into that next with Marc Summers here on 95.7 The Game. Damon, today's show is amazing. Yes, it is. And it's all because of Marc Summers being good enough to come in and hang out with us, not just this hour, but he's sticking around next hour too. And that's good. We haven't even gotten a Food Network yet. I promise myself, I promise you, we would come back talking about physical challenges.
Yes. We would.
Who came up with them?
Alan Silberberg was our head writer. This guy was a genius. Knew how to write into my sense of humor, but also knew how to do these things. So he and Byron Taylor, who built all the props, every night at about 7 o'clock, they would bring in about 20 kids from the local school systems, and we would try these things out. And if they didn't work 3 times, then we would never put them on the show. And the classic one was there was a mailbox on one side of the stage, and they had a row of paper airplanes. And they had 20 seconds to get one paper airplane into the mailbox. Now, it did not work at all during the rehearsal. But Mike Klinghoffer, our exec producer, said, I don't know, I really like this. I'm going to put it on anyway. I said, Mike, it's a waste of time.
Can't do it.
He can't do it. So he said, we're going to do it anyway. So the next day, first physical challenge comes out. They put the mailbox there, and they line up 10 paper airplanes. I said, okay, here's the deal. We have these 10 airplanes over here. We got the mailbox over there. We got 20 seconds. First one, the gets, I go right back into it, gets the airplane into the mailbox, gets 40 points in continued control. And then I looked at the camera, and I said, okay, I'm going to tell you guys something. We tried this in rehearsal. It did not work. Our exec producer loves it. And I said, here's the deal. If any one of these kids gets the plane into the mailbox, I'll give you my house. Okay, that's what I said. On your mark, get set, go. The first kid picks up the first plane, boom, right into the freaking mailbox, and they get an extreme close-up on me. I mean, what was I going to do?
Homeless ever since.
Homeless ever since. But, that was the fun stuff. That was the shtick that we did. And we were a bunch of frat guys playing games for kids. And we got away with everything because Nickelodeon was just starting to build the channel. They never looked at anything we did. I'm doing Ed Sullivan impressions and things. Kids didn't even know what the hell I was talking about. And yet they were laughing. And I used to do, and ready for this, Ethel Merman impression. Now, you guys don't even know who Ethel Merman was.
You'll be swell.
There you go.
You'll be great.
And one day a kid in the audience goes, hey, Marc, I can do Ethel Merman as well. The kid was like 10 years old. So we came out of commercial and we both did, Ethel Merman. Well, who the hell would do that? Okay. And I had regular things. I had my assistant, Mary Dudley, and I'd bring her on every day, and she'd, what's the Yiddish word of the day? And, she'd say, she would say, Meshuggah. And I said, thank you. Tell us what Meshuggah means. It means crazy. Thank you, Mary Dudley. And I just made up stuff as we went along, and for whatever reason, it just worked,
It was fantastic. Again, it's I'm literally being wrapped like in a blanket full of warm childhood memories in here. When it came to the obstacle course at the very end, did you have a favorite obstacle? Would you rank after everything that you've seen as the easiest, the hardest? Which stood out to you as this is even a little unfair?
Well, you can never depend on kids to do what you want them to do. And we had it figured that there would be 2 wins in an obstacle course in a 5-day week to stay on budget. So sometimes we'd have 3 or 4 winners. So we would try and make the hardest obstacle course we possibly could. And if you saw the ant farm on stage, you knew we were over budget because it took the kids an hour and a half to get through the freaking ant farm, okay? But certain times, they would still go through it. And then we'd go like 2 weeks without a winner, and we'd build what we think was the easiest course possible, and they couldn't get through it. So you never could predict what was going to work and what wasn't going to work. The gumball machine was one of my favorites. It just was cool. You went through all those balls and ended up at the bottom, and that was cool. Certainly Pickett, I think, is I named that, and that's kind of my deal. It's gigantic nose. We do Drunk Double Dare in Beer Week in Philadelphia every year. We just
call it like Dunkle Dare?
We call it Dunkle Dare. And
Fun.
when we bring out the nose, everybody goes berserk. I don't know what it is about that deal. Once again, childhood memories, nostalgia, and and at the end of the night, after we're doing a 2-hour show where people are liquored up, you see grown-ups throwing green slime and getting whipped creamed to death, and just these are now. Think about it. If you were 12 years old, you're now 42. Okay, and you have a real job in kids, but for some reason you bring out Marc Summers, alcohol, and physical challenges, and hold the bar. All doors are open and anything is possible.
It's fantastic. And everything that is old is new again.
Yep.
And I know that there have been incarnations. I know you tried it again in 2000.
No, let me stop you there.
All right, wasn't you?
They couldn't decide if they wanted me to do it. They thought in 2000 I was too old.
What the hell is that?
So they said, we're going to get a new host, but we want you to be the executive producer, okay? So I selected the kid who was to take my place, and he actually was
very magnanimous.
Well, he was very good. The problem was some of the behind-the-scenes action where we had, too many cooks in the kitchen, so to speak. Where they had this guy. I never had an IFP. IFP is, for those listening, as a little thing in your ear, and the producers are talking.
Voice
to
of
you.
God.
Yeah, I never had that. They were telling this poor kid everything to say. Now, we hired him for a reason. He was smart. He was good at what he did. He didn't need an IFB. But the producer at the time, then they wanted to add something to make it different. So they added something called the Triple Dare Challenge, which took an hour and a half to explain, and then if you didn't want to do it, it didn't move the game forward. So sadly, it didn't. Jason Harris was the host, and he was really good at it. Never got the opportunity he deserved. And, for whatever reason, I'm the guy who is most remembered from the program, but not to take anything away from Jason, because he's had a great career. He is like the top voiceover guy in the country and is brilliant at what he does, but that, for whatever reason, didn't work out.
And that is not Harvey the announcer.
No, Harvey's still a dear friend, and he still does Dunkle Dare with me, and Robin was with me in Philly last week doing it. And yeah, we're all still, that's a cool thing about everybody on that cast, from Alan Silverberg, our head writer, to Mike Klinghoffer. We're all still friends. We have dinner, we hang out, and it was fantastic.
I've got a note here from Albie himself saying, ask him about forgetting to stuff the flag in the pillow. Because the kid would start parading around with the flag and not put it in the pillow.
No. Here's what happened. The very first episode, once again, we didn't know what the hell we were doing. So I tell him the obstacle course. I say, on your mark, it said go. And it was called Nightmare. And there was supposed to be an orange flag in the pillow. Well, somebody forgot to put the orange flag in the pillow. On your mark, it said go in 60 seconds. And the head of the network, Jerry Laybourne at the time, was there and said, "Now we can't do that for our first show, so let's go back." And so now they put the flag in, and the kid dumps it, and now the flag, which should have come out first, is now on and so another 60 seconds. And so we did it 3 or 4 times before they finally figured out where, and basically they had it sticking out at the very end to move it on. But you learn these things along the way. If you go back and look at the first episode of Price is Right, as good as Barker always was, he wasn't as good on episode 1 as he was on 20,001. And we can say that for all of us. I'm sure the show you do now is better than the show you did 5 years ago. And certainly I'm much better as a host now than I was when we started. I look at the first 65 and I kind of wonder why they ever kept me around. I was so bad. But if you're given permission to learn your craft on the job, then we're lucky, and it hopefully turns out.
Yeah, no, and you got to have the support from up top, or you get pulled or yanked, or all of a sudden there's another person that they're trying out. Did at any point in time you think they're going to replace me?
When they went into syndication, they almost did. Because the cable show had done so well, and I was making a ton of dough at the time with personal appearances, stuff like that. And they didn't like what my agent asked for, and they were getting ready to replace me, and we had 24 hours. And finally, Jerry Laybourne, thank God,
But you're supposed to ask for less when you're going network?
Don't you
Come
think?
on.
And she said, it worked with him. I'm not sure it's going to work without him. Give him what he wants. We're sticking with him. And so there was a turning point. Now, here was an interesting story. I find out through the grapevine that they're doing an adult version of Double Dare. Okay. Why didn't you tell me? Well, you're a kid show host. We would never ask you to do it. So here's a trivia question for you. Who did the pilot of Adult Double Dare?
I have no Artie Lang.
No clue.
Bruce Jenner.
No way.
Bruce Jenner.
Yep.
Wow.
Yep.
Wow.
Yeah, there you go. And it was pathetic and never saw the light of day.
Wow.
And now known for other things.
Yes.
Yeah,
And now,
I don't know what those are, but nonetheless.
and known for other things.
Yeah.
So let's see. I believe that we have thoroughly gone over the oral history of Double Dare. We haven't even made the career transition that you did to Food Network, which is where I rediscovered you.
Oh, really? Yeah.
As you helped really put another young fledgling network on the map.
Twice I've done that.
Yes, you have. Look at what you're doing for our show's ratings right now.
3 times a charm.
Yeah, so when we come on back, we're going to make that transition to Food Network. Was there a Playboy Grotto Mansion period in between? Was there a bottoming out? Was there a drug-induced cocaine Marc Summers on a bender era at any point in time?
No.
We get to all that behind the music with Marc Summers next on 95.7 The Game. It is great to have you along this afternoon. We have the former host of Nickelodeon's Double Dare, host on Food Network, guest all over Food Network, a cameo appearance on Workaholics, if I can bring that up too, Marc. It is so good to have Marc Summers in with us for another hour. In case you're wondering, where is all the Double Dare talk? It is in our past. We have a long career to go over. You can go ahead and podcast it and listen to a full oral history of Double Dare, which was all of last hour. Marc, this hour I'd like to move on to the second network you helped put on the map. Food Network and Unwrapped is where I rediscovered you after a couple years of losing you for a while. And, you know, I went off to college. I did things. I discovered girls. TV meant less. And then, you know, you get your heart broken and you turn to food.
Yep. We've all been there.
Food Network calls you. You call Food Network. How does that happen?
Again, a mistake. I was on Lifetime Television doing a show called, I was on a show called The Home Show on ABC. They canceled it and they realized there was still an audience. So they hired me at Lifetime. I'm the only man on Lifetime Television. They're paying me an exorbitant amount of money. It was
Co-host
insane.
Meredith Baxter Burney.
Yes, doing Petticoat Junction. And I'm hosting a show called Our Home. Then I do a talk show with a lady by the name of Sissy Biggers called Biggers and Summers. Then I host a show on History Channel called History IQ. It was supposed to be the hardest game show on television. It was so hard nobody could answer anything. And then I'm starting to figure out, well, maybe I'm done. Maybe I'm a one-hit wonder. Maybe this ain't going anywhere. And for whatever reason, throughout my career, people have always come and pitched me shows and thought that I could produce them and get them on TV. To this day, I have no idea why that's happened, but I've been lucky in that arena as well. A lady by the name of Roseanne Gold, who was a great chef, I used on Our Home. And thought, well, she'd be great on television. So I went and did a pitch meeting at Food Network with Roseanne Gold, and I was going to produce the show. She has written 3 James Beard award-winning books, Recipes 1, 2, 3, Desserts 1, 2, 3, and I thought, well, this will be great television. And all the time I have Roseanne in the room, they're saying, well, would you like to be on Food Network? Would you like to do a show with us? And I'm thinking, well, why are they asking me that? I'm here to pitch a show. And at the end, they didn't pick up Roseanne's show, but they called me up and they said, would you be on our air? And I went, well, doing what? I don't cook. And they said, well, we've done research and you have this huge following from the Nickelodeon days. And we think, like Dick Clark, people will follow you over to our network. So would you come on the program? And I went, sure, what do you want me to do? And I was hired to do a show called It's a Surprise. Now, the surprise was nobody was watching. It was about surprise parties, and it was a poorly produced, under-budgeted program. And we did a few episodes. I think we did 2 seasons. I think maybe we did 26 of those things. And in the meantime, I got asked to look at a videotape. They had done a special called Unwrapped with another host by the name of Marc Silverstein. And I looked at it and I thought, oh, my God, you know what? At the time, biography was the biggest thing going on in A&E.
Sure.
And I said, I think Unwrapped could be for Food Network what biography is for A&E. Let's do it. So we shot 13 episodes, and they put us on at 10:30 on Monday nights, crashed and burned for 3 weeks. And they called me up from the network and said, this show just isn't working. We thought it was going to work. We're going to move you to 9 o'clock on Monday for the next couple of weeks. If it works, great. Otherwise, you're out of a job. Well, the ratings exploded on Monday nights at 9. First, we're doing a half hour on Mondays. Then we're doing an hour on Mondays. Then we're doing a show called Trivia Unwrapped. So it was all Marc Summers. I was the Guy Fieri on Food Network before Guy. I was on 90 minutes a night doing that, and they were running Unwrapped to death. And so that became what it became. And the chefs were kind of angry in the early days, the Mario Batalis and the Bobby Flays, because I had the number one show. They were the chefs. And, I'm sitting there talking about Clark bars and, sweethearts. And, I'm getting all the numbers. And so from there, I started to host Next Food Network Star. And I was the guy who hosted when Guy Fieri won that year. And I did the first 2 years. Bobby and Giada do a great job doing it since then. And then I became a producer, first with Dinner Impossible, then Restaurant Impossible, and many other shows along the way. And so if somebody would have told me that, that when History IQ started, Unwrapped started the same week, and I said to my wife, I'm going to end my career at History Channel. This is the coolest show ever. History Channel crashes and burns, and Unwrapped becomes the longest-running show in the history of Food Network. So you can never predict what's going to happen with these programs.
And it's still in syndication. I mean,
it's
see
on
it
a lot.
All the time.
What's the other Food Network Cooking Channel?
Cooking Channel.
Do I see it there now too?
You see it on Cooking Channel. Yeah, absolutely, you do.
It's crazy how people have gotten into food as almost it's sport. I mean, people pay attention to food like it's a team now. They are obsessed with it, and we see chefs.
They're like rock stars. Who would have thought, right?
I mean, did it start? The modern celebrity chef started with Wolfgang Puck. Am I wrong there?
Well, you know what? That's probably about right. I would say Wolfgang was one of the first real celebrity chef in. There was a show called PM Magazine, and it was on the Group W stations around the country. Now I'm talking shop here a little bit, but there was a guy by the name of Chef Tell, and Chef Tell was this German guy who had a great sense of humor. In fact, he was based out of Philadelphia, and we once did a gourmet obstacle course with Chef Tell. That was one of the funniest episodes we ever did. And once again, there we are doing shtick for kids, and it was always on two levels like Rocky and Bullwinkle. But when Bobby Flay did Iron Chef and stood on the cutting boards, which was sacrilegious back in the day, all of a sudden people started to go, "What is this?" And then Rachel Ray exploded, then Giada exploded, and it's just like a who's who. Walk down the street, with Guy Fieri or any one of the other names, and you can't get from point A to point B because they're mobbed.
Diners, drive-ins, and dives is television heroin.
Oh, there's no question. No question.
You can run 13 episodes in a row, and if I don't have anything going on that day,
every one of them.
I might sit and surf the entire afternoon on my couch.
Yep, and Guy is amazing. Okay, he has been magical gold to that network for the last 10 years. He's now producing television for Food Network. He has restaurants all over the country. And here's the thing. I get upset with social media saying the crap that they do. You will never meet a nicer human being than Guy Fieri. Trust me on this. He is the nicest man ever. I always say Guy wouldn't give me the shirt off his back. He'd give me the skin off his back. He has done things for me that he did not have to do. And I can only say that he is one of the most magnificent human beings I've ever met and been friends with ever in my lifetime.
Well, it's very cool.
It's nice to hear.
We've actually been trying to set up with his assistant, Becca.
Yeah.
Becca,
Yes.
a situation where we know how hard it is for him to come into the city, where we're going to go up there and meet him at his Johnny Garlic's or whatever's up in Santa Rosa.
Yeah, he got rid of all those restaurants, so he doesn't own any of those anymore.
Oh, he doesn't?
No.
Well, I figured they'd probably still let him in.
They might.
So we're going to tape something with him in August, we've been told. Because So Gianna and I, especially Gianna, though, we have been interested in sports and food in ways that we just saw Sports Illustrated hop on a new digital platform where they're going to cover sports and food for the very first time. And we feel like our great idea was beaten to the marketplace by Sports Illustrated and a couple of other things. We have an idea for a show where we go around all the Pac-12 football Saturday stadia.
Right.
And we tailgate.
The most pitch show at Food Network is either tailgating or Firemen Who Cook.
Firemen Who Cook?
Yeah, those are the two most pitch shows at Food Network. And the answer is no.
But I didn't see anything.
You won't anymore because they don't score. And you got to keep in mind that our demos are 60-40 women to men. And the reality of it is women don't really care about a bunch of guys drinking beer and cooking on barbecues in the back of their station wagon.
I'm not talking about the casual tailgater. I'm talking about you go to the guy who's got the whole barbecue pit set up and really taking it way too seriously.
That's a special. It's not a series.
Fair enough.
Okay, well, that's good to know because actually on Facebook here, we did that video a few minutes ago, right before the show started. And a lot of the questions are, how do you pitch a show to the Food Network? Like, what is the process? Do you send them an idea? Do you try to meet a producer?
You try to get a producer because if you walk in cold, they won't even take a meeting because of the potential lawsuits and whatever. So you either have to come in with an agent who sets up the meeting or a producer who comes in and they're your partner and they're the ones who they've done business with in the past. So, for instance, I got a phone call yesterday from a friend of mine, Sal, who has a restaurant down in Florida. He had a friend who had an idea. They sent me a sizzle reel yesterday, and driving up here today, I was on the phone with these guys talking to them about their sizzle reel, what it is I liked, what I disliked, and what they need to do to go back and change it. And, ideas change on a regular basis over there, and every network, And so from month to month, we're going to find out that, we need to do more of this and less of that. And you have to sort of stay in tune with what's going on at HGTV, and what's going on at Food Network and what's going on at Cooking Channel and, what's A&E doing now and what's Bravo doing now. Because there's so many channels and so many programs to view, and the viewer, if you're not, staying with that show, if the turnoff at 7 minutes goes away and you're going to something else, chances are you're not going to be on in the next few weeks. It's hard. It's much harder now than when I first started. I must tell you that.
I bet, and I'm sure it's you probably like the amount of people that think they have a great idea, as we.
And I've heard everything, and if I've heard everything, the network's heard everything. So what they're looking for now, quite honestly, is breakthrough talent. Who is the next Guy Fieri? Who is the next Bobby Flay?
Gianna Franco.
Gianna Franco. There you go.
The Sports Dish.
And so, yeah, very nice.
That's our show on 95.7. But that's a little different than what Damon was talking about. We take like food from ballparks and we try them, and then I try to create the recipes at home that make sense for like moms cooking for their kids.
That's
not a bad idea. Say the grasshopper taco.
What is that?
Because at Chapulines is what they're called. I'm Hispanic,
right.
So they sell them at Safeco Field.
Right.
And Marc Melanson, one of the closer for the Giants, was talking about eating insects. And I'm like, we need to find out what these Chapulines are. So they turned their grasshopper tacos. They're grasshoppers dipped in lime and chili.
Oh, my.
And there's a pound of them like on a tortilla. And you just eat it with a little cilantro and onions, and it's not bad. We tried it. It wasn't disgusting.
I've never tried it. I never will try it. I don't eat bugs.
No.
Thank you.
The tie in there, and obviously you're not going to go home and make grasshopper tacos for your kids,
right.
But how fun to sort of kind of create something, you want to eat grasshoppers, lots of protein. Well, what else can we put in a taco for a kid?
It's actually a cute idea.
Thank you.
You get frustrated. For years I pitched kids cooking, and at one point Bob Tushman, who was running the programming at the time, said, "If you ever come in here with another kid idea, I'm going to throw you out." Well, fast forward the tape, and all of a sudden they're doing Chop Junior, and they're doing
Kids Barbecue Challenge,
and all that kind of
huge.
stuff. I always thought that because kids were watching Food Network, that if at 9:00 on Sunday morning, if you put a kids cooking show on where moms and dads and kids could sit around and play together and cook together, that would always work. Never got that opportunity. But, and everybody claims, in success, there are a million people who go, that was my idea. So, look, I wasn't the only guy who said, let's do kids. There are a lot of people who came and pitched it. At the time, they said no. Then they put one on with kids, it exploded, and now everything has like kids cooking.
It evolves,
so, go figure,
The forever familiar voice of Marc Summers. It's exactly what you're hearing. He's here in studio with us this afternoon on 95.7 The Game. What is the worst show pitch idea you have heard or can recall without hurting yourself?
Whoa. The worst.
I mean, is it like My Nana Can Cook and I Want You to Meet My Grandmother? I mean, when The Sopranos were really big, I remember Steve Sharippa came in and pitched a show to me that was like, the Goomba show, a bunch of Italian guys going on and, eating pizza and that kind of thing. And, at the time they were hot, and Sharippa certainly is a great guy, but, they weren't buying that kind of thing. It wasn't a horrible idea, I guess. But, there's a thing called narrowcasting. And if you're only going to do a show about pizza, or if you're only going to do a show about, X, only Chinese food, there's not enough people who,
are going to watch that. So to make a show broad-based, interesting enough, and once again, most of the shows on Food Network are talent-driven. People tune in to Giada for a reason. They turn into Bobby Flay for a reason. My son is the exec producer of Iron Chef now. He also did Cutthroat Kitchen prior to that, but now he's doing Iron Chef.
Wow.
And, they just discovered a young lady who's been on the network before, Stephanie Izzard, who is the new Iron Chef. So is Stephanie the next star of the network? I don't know. We'll find out. She just started. They just shot some new episodes of Iron Chef with her this week. So
I can tell you, The Girl and the Goat in Chicago is one of the best meals I've ever had in my entire life. She's a fantastic chef. How many of when you walk into a restaurant now, do you feel that you get above and beyond effort because not only are people excited to see you, but are trying to dazzle your incredibly defined Food Network palate?
Well, here's the deal. I'm a Midwest guy. Give me, steak, French fries, and a Coke, and I'm the happiest man in America. Now, the hard part is, and God knows you're flattered to get into restaurants that you can't get into. I mean, the hottest restaurant in New York right now is called Le Coucou. And it's authentic French, which when I first moved to L.A., everything was authentic French. Then you couldn't find one. So this has started it up again. And, I called the other day and I said, can I get a reservation? And the answer was no. And I said, I hate to do this, but my name's Marc Summers. Marc Summers from Food Network? Yeah. Oh, when would you like to come, Mr. Summers?
Wow.
So I got a 7 o'clock coming in August. So
the millennial didn't just recognize your voice. That alone should have sent you into a fury.
But she, thank heavens, remembered who I was from television. So that, always getting the reservation is good. But they always bring you a lot of food, and you feel obligated to eat it. But there's many things, seafood-wise or otherwise. I don't want oxtail soup. I don't want turtle soup. I don't want, I don't eat oysters. And so that makes it very difficult. And sometimes I've sent stuff back, and the chef comes out and goes, oh, I'm sorry, didn't it taste good? And I said, look, I don't eat pork, or I don't eat this, or I don't eat that, and I really appreciate it and all that other kind of stuff. I went and did I had a dinner at a restaurant in the Wynn Hotel in Las Vegas, and the guy called me, and he brought out like one of everything. I mean, it was the most insane food I've ever had. And for dessert, he brought out not a piece of pie or a piece of cake. He gave me an entire cake, an entire pie, an entire whatever. Well, he wanted to get on Food Network, so that was his whole deal. But I'm standing there. It's decadent as hell. And I said, can I divide this up? Because I'm only going to eat a small slice of this stuff. And they said, no. I went into the kitchen, got plates and forks and knives, and started slicing it and dropping off desserts at people's tables because it just looked gluttonous after a while, So it's a blessing and a curse. But certainly, look, think of my life. It's the most charmed existence in the world. I threw green liquids at 11-year-olds, and then, I get to eat at the best restaurants in the world. And, and I get a check at the end of the week. So I'm absolutely very thankful for the opportunity that I've had to go do what I would have done for free, as you guys would do for free as well,
Sure.
When you were doing Unwrapped, was there a process or a certain food trick that blew you away? And of all your Unwrapped lessons, this left your jaw dropped? I can't believe. I remember when you were trying to get to the root of Cheetos, and Cheetos basically said that how they make the actual shape of the Cheeto was proprietary information they could not show you.
Well, that was also Peeps. They used to make Peeps by hand. It would take 27 hours to make one Peep. Then they came up with this multi-bazillion-dollar machine, and I said, "Can we put it on?" Absolutely not. Now they showed it to me, but I had to sign 17 pieces of paper that say I would never tell you anything about the damn thing. But here's the thing about Unwrapped. People would say to me, I saw you recently talk about key lime pie when you were down in, Florida. I went, I was never in Florida. So the assumption was that I went to all of these places, okay? I never went to one.
Right.
They were all pre-recorded. And then I sat initially in a diner in Denver, and then we went to Pueblo, Colorado, and then we moved to another restaurant, and then I would do it out of grocery stores and state fairs, and we traveled around the country. And I would say to the producers, what the hell are we doing this week? Because I don't know. And I would have to sell it. Fietti's always making fun of me. When I saw the show, when it was on the air, when you saw it, I had never seen any of that video. So I had to sell it through the voiceover that I was doing. And also at the beginning when I was doing the wraparound saying, coming up next, we're going to talk about Cheetos. It's one of your favorite meals. And we'll come back and, whatever the hell it was. And that was kind of an art, believe it or not. And the whole voiceover thing was kind of a joke. I didn't think Unwrapped was going to work, quite honestly. And so I was screwing around. And I took a combination. There was an announcer I grew up with named John Bartholomew Tucker, who had this sort of peculiar voice where he kind of went all over the place and went down and whatever. And then I took a little bit of Ed McMahon, and I took a little bit of myself, and I came up with this crazy-ass voiceover. And it worked. I mean, it's not normal where I take the breaks. If you go back and listen to an Unwrapped episode, it's actually voiceover-wise very strange. And yet, it's the pattern that people have learned to recognize, my voice and also the breaks. And it's just something I was having fun with, and it worked. So it's another one of those mistakes that just kind of happened.
You are prepackaged nostalgia in a walking human being. How often do you get voiceover stuff? Do you have to turn down things to keep your brand in that special mesmerizing,
I've never done any voiceovers.
Really?
Outside of this. And this has been the most peculiar thing. It is the most closed shop in Hollywood and in New York. And I've never been offered any. I tried to get into that all-boys club and was told absolutely not. Recently, I was approached by an agency that said, how come you haven't been doing voiceovers? And I said, because no agency would sign me and nobody would ever do it. So I've just signed with a new agent to hopefully do something, but I've never been in that world. That's a real tight club to get into.
You need that Mike Rowe connection.
There you go. He's great, by the way.
He is good.
He's amazing.
Have you ever listened to his 5-minute long short attention span theater podcasts?
No, I bet they're great.
They're really, really good.
He's so smart.
He is. He's ahead of the game. TED Talk. You did a TED Talk about what?
I did. I started off as a stand-up comic about being politically incorrect, and who, I have a friend who just lost his job. He would book college dates, celebrities who would go to colleges and speak, and they said, you can't do colleges anymore because everybody's protesting. This is too dirty, this is too political, this is too left-wing, this is too right-wing. And when I got ready to do my one-man show, I hadn't been on stage in a long time. And I went and worked at a place called the Slipper Club on the Lower East Side of New York City.
Sounds shady.
Yes. And it was on the up and up. And I went and did a joke from my old Magic Castle act that I hadn't done in 30 years. And it always worked. And it was a card trick, and it doesn't work, and one thing after another. And I would always pick somebody from Asian descent to come on stage and do it. And then I would say, take the card and divide it in half, and they go 7.5. And the line was always, gee, I thought you guys were good at math. And it, for 29.5 years, got a laugh. Well, I hadn't worked it in about 10 years, and I went on the stage, and I got booed. Okay, and a guy in a $2,000 suit with a watch too big and too expensive came up to me and goes, it was fun to watch you in person, but you really pissed off the audience when you did that Asian thing. And I said, back in my day, we called it a joke. And I got asked to do a TED Talk and, go online and look up Marc Summers and Politically Incorrect. We have all lost our sense of humor, I mean, there used to be jokes about Jewish people and Italian people and Asian people and Spanish people. One of my dear friends who just passed away, Bill Dana, who was Jose Jimenez, came up with this great character that was massive, and then he couldn't do it anymore because of, the Hispanic aspect of the whole situation. And I think we all need to calm the you-know-what down and, get our senses of humor back, especially with everything that's going on. I don't care if you're left or right. We just need to relax a little bit.
The new national pastime is recreational outrage.
Oh, my
God. You get incredibly angry over things that if you were raised right, you wouldn't even be angry about at all.
And friendships are going away because you don't like that your friend voted for Trump or your friend didn't vote for Trump or what. Why can't we just all be friends and get along? It's nuts out there,
Said the guy who got into a battle with Burt Reynolds.
Yeah, well,
that's crazy.
That's a whole other thing.
Well, we've got some audio on that. We're going to come back to that in just a second. Tell me a little bit about everything in its place, because I know that OCD is something that you have come clean about, you've talked about, and I was even like, I hope everything here in studio is going to be all right for you.
It's been blown out of proportion. How much time do we have here before the next break? Because I want to know how to
3 minutes.
Okay, I'll set it up. I was hosting a talk show called Biggers and Summers, and got information in my apartment that Dr. Eric Hollander was coming on talking about obsessive-compulsive disorder. I'd never heard of it. And when I did the research the night before, it said, puts things neat and orderly, has obsessive thoughts, repetitive actions. And I go, well, I got to do this, I do this, I do this, I do this. Oh, my God, this thing I've been hiding my entire life has a name. So now do you go on TV the next day and expose yourself, or do you lie and pretend you don't have it? Well, I get to the studio early, and I say to Dr. Hollander, I think I have this. And he said, why? And I told him. And I go on national TV that day, and when we get to the segment, I said, I think I have obsessive-compulsive disorder. Well, the phones lit up, number one. And it was sort of like outing myself, and it was a change in my career, hugely. I was the guy hosting the messiest show on television, and yet I had obsessive-compulsive disorder. That led into an appearance on Oprah, The Today Show, Howard Stern. I wrote a book. And I was the national spokesperson for obsessive compulsive disorder for 2 years. And then, people come up to me today and say, I saw you on Oprah, and thank God you changed my life because I didn't know what I was doing, or I read your book, or I heard you on Stern, or whatever it was about. So the good that I was able to give to people, inform them, and make their lives better has been the best reward from that. But getting from point A to point B, and you can be a drunk, you can be an alcoholic, you can be a drug addict in Hollywood, and nobody cares. But if you have obsessive compulsive disorder or you have depression, holy cow. It brought my career to a standstill for the longest period of time. I was supposed to host Hollywood Squares.
Stigma? Was it just stigma?
Well, they started rumors that I was impossible to work with and that I was crazy and one thing after another, none of which was true. But, when this was going on in 1999, people were just learning about this thing. And so it was I didn't work for a couple of years. I lost a house. It was pretty ugly. And thank God for Food Network, it turned my life around. But there was a period there where it was pretty grim.
Wow.
Yeah.
Now, did you were you a neat freak kind, or did you have to lock the door 5 times?
Well, all those things. People with OCD, the rule book changes on a regular basis.
Sure.
Mine was about orderliness and staying neat and clean. I was never germ-phobic. People say to me, "Oh, I can't believe you shook my hand." It's like, well, it wasn't about shaking your hand. I never was germ-phobic. And so these things have grown out of proportion over the last couple of years. And, like you said, about, I hope the studio's all right. And I had lunch with a guy yesterday and goes, is it okay if I shake your hand? And I went, of course it's okay. So, that part of it drives me insane.
Right.
But the good that came out of that book and going to the next step was important, and it's interesting because Howie Mandel got a pass, Howie's a good guy, but Howie used his OCD and it worked in a positive way.
Yeah.
It kind of brought me to a screeching halt for a while, but luckily I was able to get back to it. But based on that, when we come back, I'd love to talk about how I got cancer, and then from cancer I got into a car accident where I broke every bone in my face, which led to going into theater, which led to a one-man show, which has led to a documentary. And so I'm in phase 3 of my career now. It's fascinating to me, quite honestly.
That's what we're talking about next with Marc Summers here on 95.7 The Game. Welcome back. It's great to have you here. Marc Summers is in studio with us. He is the classic host of Double Dare. If you're wondering where all that Double Dare talk is, Damon, go back podcast 5 to 6 o'clock. We basically did a whole hour on Double Dare, and now we're into other things like Food Network. We want to get into a little bit of Dinner Impossible, but we were talking about how OCD pigeonholed you and for a minute parked your career, and then unfortunately you had to battle cancer. You get involved in a huge car accident. What happened?
Well, it just was one of those weird, periods of life, and everybody goes through it. I was not feeling good, go to the doctor, they do some tests, throw me in a hospital and said, you got some sort of blockage. If it's not done in the next 24 hours, we got to go in there. I wake up and, I'm still part stand-up comic, and I said, hey, doc, do I have cancer? And he goes, yeah, as a matter of fact, you do. Well, those are words you never want to hear. And he said, you need to see an oncologist. So I have something called chronic lymphatic leukemia, which I've been clean now for 5 years, knock on something. I went through chemo through 2 years. And it was, sort of a wake-up call. And
Sure.
just when I'm getting better, we're coming back from a Restaurant Impossible shoot in Kansas City, and I get into a cab that hydroplanes on a rainy day, go into a divider in Highway 95, and not wearing a seatbelt, go into the credit card machine and break every bone in my face. And, I have now cheated death twice. And thought back, the one thing I always wanted to do but never did was theater. I started in Indianapolis, in an area called Footlight Musicals. Did Bye Bye Birdie and a few other programs, but somehow got sidetracked to doing stand-up and doing magic and, hosting kid shows and doing food shows. But I would go to the theater. My daughter's sitting in the next room, and, from the time she was little, we would go to theaters and, cry at every curtain call. And when I was living in New York, she used to come, and I had the knack of sneaking into Act 2s of just about every show. We saw, Damn Yankees 30 times or something, I think, but only Act 2. But nonetheless, I had a friend who I had met in a bar in New York City who was a Broadway producer, and I had been contacted. I had a lot of friends who were in theater and said, I want to do this. And I had a lunch with a guy by the name of Bruce Valanche, very talented writer, and he was doing Hairspray on Broadway at the time. And he said, you've been talking about this for years. Stop talking about it and do it already. So I called a friend who was a producer, and I said, how do I do this? And he said, I just took over a theater That's doing summer stock in Long Beach Island, New Jersey. We're doing Grease this summer. Do you want to play Vince Fontaine? And I said, do I have to audition? He said, no. And I said, I'll take it. And so I auditioned we rehearsed for 4 weeks, and then we did 3 weeks. And I went, oh, my God, this is the greatest thing that's ever happened to me. I just love a live audience. And so I met a kid. His name was Drew Gasparini, who is from the Bay Area. The Gasparinis are fantastic family, very musical family. And Drew was backstage with me a lot because he had a small part in Grease. He had just done the lead in Rent, I think, and he was having a small part in Grease. And we got to know each other. He was 24 years old. Next thing I know, I'm in New York City, and he's got me on stage with him singing at Joe's Pub and singing at Studio 54 Below and doing comedy and doing shtick. Then he introduces me to a friend whose name is Alex Brightman. Alex Brightman at the time was in Wicked. Then he became one of the leads in Matilda. And last year he was the star on Broadway of School of Rock. They both grew up watching me, were somewhat, in awe, and found out I had this theater bug. And I said, I want to do a one-man show. And they said, well, what would you do it about? And I showed them a book I wrote called Everything in Its Place. Alex read it and said, this is what the show is. So for the next 2 or 3 years, I took them to dinner and every 6 weeks, and they would sit there with a tape recorder and paper and pencil and wrote down stuff. In the meantime, they were working on their own career. They were doing a show called Make Me Bad at Bloomington Playwrights Project in Bloomington, Indiana, where you went to college.
Go Hoosiers.
There you go. And as they were leaving the theater after doing all sold-out performances, a guy by the name of Chad Rabinovich, who was the head of the theater there, said, if you guys ever have anything else, bring it to me first. And they said, we're working on a one-man show with Marc Summers. And he said, I'll take it. Well, now you got to do it, okay? So... Man, we did the first read-through in a rehearsal hall in New York 2 Decembers ago, and I read it in my bed the night before and thought, well, this is okay. But then when I got up and read it and performed it that day, I had to stop 4 times. I broke down crying. It was so emotional to go through certain phases of my life, and I kind of let it all out. Next thing I know, we're doing 3 weeks in Bloomington. Then last year we did the Adirondack Theater Festival. And now we're in conversations to do it off Broadway, which is the most insane thing I've ever heard of in my entire life. But 2 kids who grew up watching me, Josh Yawn and Matt Klickstein, who are in their early 30s, came to me and said, we want to do a documentary on the whole process. And I said, absolutely not. They said, why? I said, who cares? Well, they, much like me, were pains in the asses and kept asking me over and over again. And I finally said yes. And what they shot premieres in October, and I'm so proud of it. It's what it was like for a 60-plus-year-old guy, after doing 2 successful television shows and writing and producing programming, to go back on stage and try and do a one-man show, and the trials and tribulations. When I got in the car accident, I had lost 80% of my memory. And the fear was, am I going to get it back, and how much of it is going to get back? I walked into a meeting a few months after that and reintroduced myself to an executive at Bravo who said, Mark, we've known each other for 20 years. Why are you reintroducing yourself to me? I didn't remember names. At times I had trouble remembering my wife's first name.
Wow.
So over a 6 to 9 month period, it slowly came back. Trying to memorize 70 pages, even though it's your own life, was extremely difficult. And 2 weeks before the show, I went to Chad and said, I can't do this. We need to shut this down. And he said, we're sold out every performance. Figure it out. And thank goodness I did. And it worked. And I'm having a ball doing it. It's really exciting. We're going to launch in Los Angeles in October. We go L.A., Austin, New York, Philly, Chicago, Baltimore, I think is where we are. And then hopefully...
Can we add some San Francisco
I
dates?
know. Yeah, make a stop here.
Yeah, I'd love it. If somebody is willing to have us come and do it, that would be amazing. And so it was gut-wrenching to do the show every night, and I would break down crying at different spots because it was very emotional to relive the various things I relived. And it's up and down and over and out. And, one of the weirdest things ever said to me, when I started doing chemo, I kind of wanted to keep it secret, didn't want anybody to know. And I called University of Pennsylvania Hospital and I said, is there a back door I can come in, or is there some place where I can kind of be camouflaged? And they said, with all due respect, sir, everybody gets treated the same. And the answer is no. So I would walk in to get my chemo every Friday, and I was sitting next to a man, and he said, are you who I think you are? And I said, who do you think I am? And he said, are you the guy on the Food Network? I said, yes. And he said to me, I didn't think guys like you got cancer. Wow. And I said, what the hell does that mean? Right. And so it's that bubble that people put people on television on, and they think that your life is different. trust me, everybody's got a story. I was lucky enough to know people who could get this thing done on, in a theater. But everybody's got an interesting story. I'm sure you both, if we sat down for 6 weeks and wrote stuff down, you could do a one-man show as well. And so, I don't know. Yesterday I was having lunch in Beverly Hills, and TMZ always comes up, and they're fine. We get along well. But there was some photographer who just started taking pictures of me. Okay, now I had a baseball hat on, I had glasses, a shirt that was too big, flip-flops, and I know there's some snarky remark going to be, and I put it on Facebook, and I said, must have been a really slow celebrity day in Beverly Hills that this guy's taking pictures of me. But people love that stuff, and for some reason they think you're special if you're on TV. Trust me, you're not.
And you're going in for chemo. What do they think? Are you here for your physical challenge?
I know.
I mean, geez.
That was a physical challenge.
I bet it was.
Yeah.
And to kind of wrap up on this note, how are you now? Is everything good?
Well, knock on wood. They tell me I'm fine. I go get checked. I go get these.
You sure seem fine.
Yeah, I'm feeling like $1 million. And I've just been on Weight Watchers. I lost some weight. I'm exercising more. You tend to. And I have a grandson now. Okay, my kids are grown. I have a 37-year-old son. My daughter's 34. They're both very successful, have great careers. But now I've got Oliver, who's 3 years old, and talk about changing your life.
Very cool.
That is like the best thing ever. So we babysit Oliver Tuesdays and Thursdays, but he comes up and hangs out with us on the weekends, and we take him to the zoo and all that stuff. And it's a good time of life.
Awesome.
Seems like a funny time to ask you about your Playboy Grotto days. So
I was never invited for some reason.
Oh, come on!
And with my OCD, I ain't getting in that pool. Okay.
Think of the obstacle course that might have been waiting for you, though.
Let me tell you.
Talk about physical challenges. Let us quickly talk about Restaurant Impossible. Some of the projects that you walked into. How often did you say, "Well, it's going to take a miracle, not a TV show, to turn this around," and you walk out?
Many times, twice, we had problems with people who either weren't listening to Robert or just weren't playing the game, and it was difficult. And at the end, when we did the ambushes, where literally we walked in cold and we did not know any of the problems. In the episodes prior to that, we would send in spies to look around and see what was going on and talk to family members. So we kind of knew what we were walking into. But when we did the ambush shows, we just found out these places were getting ready to go out of business, and we just walked in. And, Robert was like a bull in a china shop. So you either got along with him or you didn't. And the changes he made were often very radical. But at the end, it was more about family than it was about restaurants. And I think, that was an integral part of the program. And, it worked. Once again, we did, I think, 92 episodes of Dinner Impossible. We did about 150 episodes of Restaurant Impossible, and they're still on as well. And here's my whole, schedule of life. It's about paying back. And helping people. And, if you call me, and by the way, it seems like everybody in the world has my email or my phone number, and say, I've got a show. I met with a kid yesterday. His name was John Kerwin. He does a kid show. He wanted to do a talk show on Nickelodeon. I never met the kid. He sent me a Facebook thing. I took him to lunch. Nobody ever really helped me when I was on my way up. And I always said if I was lucky enough to make it, that I was going to change. I remember once Bob Hope was on the Merv Griffin show, and Merv said, Bob, if you could point to one person who changed your career, who would it be? And Hope pointed to himself. And it's all about, hoping that somebody's going to come around and do something for you. But I'm going to tell you, most people don't. Ryan Seacrest says a very nice thing in the documentary where he said, I took a chance on him. I was producing a show for Spike TV called Ultimate Revenge, and I picked Ryan to be our host. And he says in the documentary, it was the skills that I taught him that gave him the ability to do what he did on American Idol. Well, my God, he didn't have to say that, but he did, and he was very, very kind. Neil Patrick Harris is in the documentary as well, and also says some very kind things. Fietti's in it. And so I've also had some really nice relationships. Guy and I from Food Network Star, Seacrest, because I saw him on TV when he was 19 years old, took him to lunch and said, you're amazing. And, Neil Patrick Harris and I, our bond is magic. We were both magicians.
Yeah.
I
And,
didn't know that.
Yeah, and so we, did that. And, we help each other out. His significant other, David, went to culinary school. And Neil called me up one day and said, I need a favor. I said, what's the favor? He said he needs 10 weeks of apprenticeship at a restaurant, and he wants to do it with Mario Batali. Will you call Mario? So I called Mario, and I said, hey, what are you doing? What's going on? Do you know who Neil Patrick Harris is? He goes, yeah, the guy on TV. I said, yeah.
Doogie.
Yeah, Doogie. That's exactly. He said,
Doogie
Doogie. And I said, well, his significant other was going to culinary school, and he needs an internship. He goes, 6 weeks. I said, he needs 10. He said, I only do 6. I said, I'm begging you. So Mario took him in, and at the end of week 2, offered David a full-time job. And so Neil says in the movie, we help each other. He needs something, I'm there for him. I need something, he's always been there for me. And those are the cool relationships to have,
That is very cool. And I'm glad you feel that way because Gianna wants her own Food Network show, and she'll be pitching you during our final break. And when we come on back, we're getting into a moment of controversy, your battle with Burt Reynolds on The Tonight Show next here on 95.7 The Game.
Please welcome Marc Summers, ladies and gentlemen. Do you like doing the messy stuff especially? Is that...
No, it's very strange because I'm Felix Unger. I'm a neatness fanatic. We have an obstacle
Who told
course.
you were a neatness freak?
Who told me?
Yeah. I just say that because your back is to me, and I was just talking to a back.
No, I can talk to you too, Burt.
Thank you. No, I was just wondering who told you that because...
My wife tells me that often.
She says, good morning,
I'm
you're
still
a neatness...
married, as a matter of fact.
Yes, well, you...
Let me explain this. This is what's known as losing control of the program, ladies and gentlemen.
Not really.
Burt Reynolds just threw water on me. Did you notice that, folks?
And you'll treasure it later.
Don't touch me.
So,
I used to be on your show all the time. Win, lose, or draw. I used to love that show.
funny, I don't remember.
Wow. Okay. Yeah. So anyway, we were talking about being a neatness fanatic.
Yes. I don't mind that because I deserved it.
You deserved it?
I deserved it. I did it to you. I deserved it.
That's okay.
That's the kind of guy I am.
Okay.
And I was saying to your wife the other night,
It's nice to see you two have hit it off so well.
The pie that he threw in your face at the end of that
Yes.
came with some heat on it, Mark.
Yeah, I compared it to going 10 rounds with Muhammad Ali.
The fact that you, an officially very nice, easy to talk to, and easy to get along with guy, happened to spark plug Burt Reynolds that night on The Tonight Show. You can see the clip on TV. It is real. That really happened.
It really happened, yeah. And the headlines in the New York Post the next day was Burt goes berserk on Tonight. And everybody thought it was set up. Now, let me go back. There's a classic episode with Johnny Carson and Don Rickles where Don comes out and he's making fun of Johnny with geisha girls, and Johnny picks him up and throws him into a pool of water and gets him soaked in a nice suit. So I was lucky enough one day to be flying back from New Orleans in first class, and who walks on next to me and sits for the next 4 hours is Don Rickles. And I said to him, was that real? And he goes, of course it wasn't real. It was set up. Johnny called me that day and said, help me out. Bring another suit and all this stuff. And up to that point, I bought into it. So everybody comes to me and says, that was totally set up. And my response to that is, I'm not that good of an actor, okay? I was supposed to do The Tonight Show for a year and kept getting canceled. When I finally got picked up the day that they said I was going to be on the show, the car that was taking me got a flat tire on the Ventura freeway, okay?
Jeez.
That's like,
No
this
way.
wasn't meant to be. So I finally get out there, and Burt was mad because Jay had been talking about him the night before, and he was going through a book tour, and he was going through a divorce with Lonnie Anderson.
This is Evening Shade level Burt Reynolds.
Yes, he was out of his mind at the time. And the situation was that he was segment 1 and then segment 2, and then Carrot Top was supposed to be segment 3, and then I was supposed to be segment 4 or vice versa. Well, Burt was doing so well, they kept him on for segment 3. So now there's one segment left, and they're saying Summers or Carrot Top, Summers or Carrot Top. And they were going with Carrot Top, and my publicist said, if you go with Carrot Top, at the time, my publicist also handled Jason Alexander, who was just off of Seinfeld, and they wanted Jason to be a regular on the Tonight Show. He said, if you don't put Summers on tonight, Jason Alexander's not doing the show anymore. So I got on the show. There's the good and the bad news.
Nice.
Glad
Glad that Carrot Top got his that night.
and there it was. And everything that happened, if you go on YouTube and look at Marc Summers and Burt Reynolds on the Tonight Show, I had no idea what the hell was going on. I was just in fear of my life, treading water, and I was talking to you during the break, and Jay called me the next day and said, hey, what was all that about? And I felt like I was being heckled at the Comedy Store, and I was just trying to defend myself, and it got out of hand. And, the sad part about it is, to me, Burt Reynolds had this amazing career, okay? Now, he had to put on lifts and a hairpiece to become that character. And people said to me, well, why didn't you pull off his wig? And I was like, I didn't want to stoop to that level. And now the sad part about it is the poor man is broke. He's, not particularly healthy. And it's kind of a sad end to what was at one time a glorious career.
Yeah, he's the biggest name in Hollywood.
Yes, for years.
Lonnie Anderson did not show up unless you were at least one of the biggest names in Hollywood. I mean, by the way, for a situation where you're definitely from a star power point of view, being completely outranked there.
Oh my God,
you handled yourself amazingly.
Well, thank you.
You did.
Thank you. The next day, the publicist called a friend of mine and said that Burt referred to me as a bottom feeder of show business, and that I did not give this movie star the respect that he deserved.
He said you turned your back on me.
Yeah.
Who is he, Kirk Douglas? I mean
yes.
And you were just talking.
Right.
I mean, it was natural movement.
It was odd. It was an odd evening, but certainly people walk up to me on a regular basis and talk about that. And, whenever they did the anniversary shows, 10th anniversary, whatever, we're on The Tonight Show. I'm always on it.
Absolutely. That makes it. So, it is a sports talk radio show, which we completely left by the wayside.
Oh my God.
You grew up at Comiskey.
Indiana Pacers.
Pacers.
The ABA.
Okay.
Roger Brown, Bob Nedelicki, all those folks, Mel Daniels. The Farm Club were the Indianapolis Indians, which were a AAA team, were the White Sox. So first baseball game, Comiskey Park in Chicago.
Nice.
Then they switched to Cincinnati Reds when they were the Big Red Machine. And then I go to Boston in 1971 to go to college, and I'm in a dorm right across from Fenway Park. Well, that was a change in my life.
That's it.
And so I've been a Red Sox fan. People always say, what's the scariest moment of your life? Well, I was on Oprah a couple times. I did the Howard Stern Show and the Tonight Show. Throwing the first pitch at Fenway Park couldn't be more frightening, because you want to get it across, because those people will destroy you if you don't do it.
I've been offered a lot of first pitch opportunities. I always turn it down.
Do you?
God forbid you don't get it there. Like, no one's ever remembered for the perfect strike, but if you do anything else but the perfect strike,
that's it.
You're remembered forever.
Oh my God, it's unbelievable. And so I was there at the World Series games, and I was there for Big Papi's last game last year. And
nice.
Mike O'Malley, who is also a star from Nick, who's had tremendous success. Mike O'Malley, there's a guy you should have on here. Mike knows more about sports than many humans who I've ever met. Certainly a big Red Sox fan, but he also has. Mike did Guts, okay, and then he did all these TV shows, and he's now writing a Broadway show called Margaritaville that goes on Broadway in February. He's a brilliant guy. I should get you in touch with him. But we
Nickelodeon guy's going to Broadway. What is sense of theme here?
Isn't that weird? But O'Malley is a genius when it comes to that stuff, and he's a very smart writer and very successful guy. And we always commiserate with the Red Sox when it seems like for so many years we're either first or last. We can't seem to find the happy medium along the way.
I don't know how often you agree to 2-hour-long interviews, but thank you so much for agreeing to do that with us today. You've indulged us in every way possible. It was a thrill to meet you. It is literally nostalgia personified.
Well,
that's who you are.
You were kind enough to ask. I was saying to Albie, 2 hours? What am I going to talk about for 2 hours? But you made it so easy, and it's flown by. And I thank you for having the guts to bring me on here.
Well, I'll tell you what. It is All-Star Week. We got nothing going on.
Perfect timing.
Do you remember this? When I was a kid, I love the All-Star Game. Does anybody really care anymore?
Not that much anymore.
I don't think so.
You tune in, you watch it. It's just because we get sports, and every single player that you want to see is available to you every night, all the time. The All-Star Game used to be this wedge of pie that you were only served once a year. We eat a full pie every day in sports.
And Carl Yastrzemski would go, or Yaz, any of those guys. I would go crazy. Ernie Banks, and now it's like I don't care. I don't care. You know what's the NBA All-Star Game? Who cares about that thing?
Sports without defense isn't sports to me. Marc, this was awesome. Thank you so much.